Get everything unmuted, get everything switched. Excellent. Hello. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday. Super excited for our conversation tonight. It's going to be a really good one. We're going to be talking about self-limiting stories, and also we're going to be talking about our guest's own story. This is Kimberly Spencer. Super excited to talk to you, Kimberly. So thank you, first of all, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. And I love the title of your show, Even
Oh,
Tacos Fall Apart.
thank you. We arrived at that name through a lot of community like voting, and we were throwing all these ideas out there, and it was just the one that fit perfectly. So,
It's so I mean, A, I love a good taco.
amen.
And B, like delicious. Mexican food is amazing. It's definitely
Yes.
my favorite food group. Um and B, like I've definitely been a taco multiple times falling apart
Oh
and
yes.
learning how to turn yourself into really delicious like a tostada instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. Like we've all been that taco, right? Everyone
Yep.
everyone has their taco moments. Even my 10-year-old yesterday had a taco moment over a yo-yo. And we had to have a conversation about emotions that get too big for his little body and everything. So, I mean, everybody's been there, which is what kind of the name is to me. It's like everybody has been here. We all have to come out of it on the other side. So I appreciate you saying that. That's awesome. I don't get to talk about the
Yeah.
name of the show very much. So that's good.
It's a great name, super unique, super catchy, and I love that it was created by community. That's awesome.
Yeah. I really enjoy that as well, because the community is a big part of the show. We have a lot of folks who are always active in our Discord, and a lot of folks who are active on Twitter and Facebook and just everywhere, and it's really a beautiful thing, and it's a great place to be. So I'm very glad that they were involved in coming up with the name and voting on the name and everything. So, well, all right, a little
Yeah.
bit about Kimberly before we dive in here. Kimberly Spencer is an award-winning high-performance trauma-informed coach and trainer, Amazon bestselling author, TEDx speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com, helping visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out fearlessly, and make the income and impact they deserve. From her entrepreneurial beginnings at five, the ripe old age of 5, selling bags of glitter water to her neighbors, to becoming an award-winning screenwriter, certified Pilates instructor, Miss Congeniality, and 6-time WeGo Health Activist Award nominee, Kimberly is proof that it's better to make your own mold than to conform to someone else's. She's also the former executive of a national e-commerce startup and was the owner of the private Pilates studio Fitness with Kim in Los Angeles, California. Her work has been featured on Netflix, the CW, ESPN, Chicken Soup for the Soul, NPR, and in Thrive Global, CNBC, and Forbes. So quite the accreditation there. I've got lots of socials if you're interested in learning more about what she does or connecting with her. There's website, Facebook, Twitter /X, Instagram, all of those different things. I'm about to post them in the chat right here. And if you want to connect, feel free to connect. And again, Kimberly, just welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, looking forward to this as well, and I'm just excited to serve your community in whatever way I can.
I'm having to break up the links into 2. So
hmm
there we go. It's a lot. There's a lot of links, a lot of ways to connect with you. And
We
that's
we
okay.
have a few. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We've been around for a while. Like I've been in the coaching industry space for like 8 years now, going on 9 next year. So, and next year is not too far away. So
That's
it's
true.
really a magical time. And yeah, we've been around for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Tib, welcome on in. Thank you for being here. Folks who are here in chat, either on YouTube or Twitch, if you have any questions for our guests, feel free to pop them into the chat. Use the exclamation point Q if you're on Twitch. Follow with your question. That'll put it into a question queue and make sure that I see it. If you're on YouTube, I don't have something fancy. I haven't been able to figure that out for YouTube, but you can put it into the chat and I'll make sure to see it. So, Kimberly, what are your biggest joys and the biggest challenges with what you do now? You said you've been in this space for 8 years. So, what have you learned in 8 years?
Well, it really was the past 3 years that created the most amount of transformation for me. Um, I got certified in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, timeline therapy, and hypnosis in 2016. I've been coaching since then. Prior to that, I was doing body image and wellness coaching, uh, because that stemmed from my background starting at 19 years old when I started my freelancing as a Pilates instructor, where I learned the power of how much power our body has in sending signals to our brain. Because through Pilates and through somatic work, I was able to heal myself from a 10-year battle with bulimia. And fast forward to 3 years ago, though, my husband and I were in Australia and we got stuck there because my husband's a voice actor. And so he was appearing there at one of the cons. And I like to joke that the universe has a really grand sense of humor because we were hanging out with the cast of The Walking Dead as a global pandemic breaks
Oh.
out. I was like, okay. Here we go. They know how to survive it. But it's always been a dream of ours to live abroad and to live in different countries and to raise our family in different countries. And so we figured, like, how long could this last? Let's just stay. And we ended up staying in Australia for what turned out from a 3-week trip. We stayed for 2 years. I ended up
Wow.
having another baby over there. Also ended up losing my father, my grandma, and my aunt in 1 year.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And so that whole space of transformation was an intense time of reevaluation. And I'm just gonna be totally transparent. My taco fell apart this year after we manifested and moved into our dream home. Like, you would think, like, oh, you've achieved all these dreams, TEDx, you came home, you got to, reunite with your mom, and like we brought our mom with us to Texas, and we manifested our dream home, and you would think like everything aside from all the death was going great. The problem was my nervous system had not regulated from the 3 years of challenge, of loss, of constant up leveling, constant upheaval, um, over the course of 3 years. And I had a taco fall apart moment.
Mm,
Um, and I actually burnt out from coaching because I just did not feel the capacity to serve. And I also had leaky boundaries. And
mm.
so it can happen to all of us, whether you've been, coaching for 8 years. And I've worked with clients in very high level positions for years on boundaries. But sometimes as you go along, sometimes the things you most practice, you teach, you also need to learn yourself. And
Yeah.
so there were some very hard boundaries that I had to realize that I was just letting leak all over the place, and I needed to contain my energy again. And that really landed with a diagnosis of mono this summer.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yes, mono with 2 kids, with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and a new house, and still moving with
Oh
construction.
no.
Like, and I was like, okay, my body just said I was done, and I needed a break. And so I took that break from coaching clients to really focus on what I wanted to create and put forth into the world. Ended up starting a second business all around podcast guesting, which I just love. It allowed for me to have a creative outlet, but also um, to facilitate and serve and support people in a different way, in more of a tactile way, rather than diving into their subconscious beliefs and their stuff. Because I just frankly was so deep in mine, I didn't
Mm,
want to be in other people's.
hmm.
I wanted to just share their stories, get these amazing humans out on podcasts, and like let their stories shine. And that was where I was able to embrace a pivot to where now I'm coming out of like my coaching shell and like reemerging as the butterfly, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah. Wow. So that's quite the journey. So you just stayed in Australia. You were like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna stay here. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, we literally had created like the best of circumstances. We lived by the beach. We were in what, like, a lot of Americans heard about the horrible, horrible lockdowns in Victoria.
Hmm.
And we got so many calls and texts of like, "Are you okay?" And we're like, "We're fine." Like, because where we were, they locked down the borders so heavily, like
Hmm.
no one was traveling in, no one was traveling out. And so we kind of lived a very normal life. My son got to go to school. Like we got to live by the beach and take daily beach walks. Like it was really the best of both worlds, and this paradox of then also watching from afar and watching, having to say goodbye to my dad on an iPad. And
Yeah.
that, like, it was this weird sort of conundrum of like the beauty and the joy of being in this beautiful space, feeling so supported, having another child over there, and then also simultaneously losing family members as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. And then you moved back to Texas?
We moved back to California to wrap
Okay.
up the estates because basically, and to support my mom with that
Hmm.
because she lost her. I mean, it was my family members, but it was her sister, her mom, her husband. So we really wanted to support her with that. And then with the plan was always for us to move to Texas because my husband's from Texas. That's where he got started in voiceover, was in Houston. And so the plan was, but there's no way I was moving to Houston. So it's hot.
It
It's really
is.
hot
It
there.
is.
So we moved outside of Austin, and it's
Mhm.
great. We love it here. He's have beautiful land. We have a garden, got some chickens, learned how to farm. Like it's great.
Yeah, hot and sticky. You're not wrong. Houston is so dang sticky. That is true. Oh,
Yes.
girling, I didn't know you were in Houston. That's awesome. Yeah, it is very sticky there. I live
It
up
is
in the
very sticky
DFW
there.
area, but my sister lives in Austin.
Gotcha.
So, of all the places in like Texas for you to live, Austin's probably the one that's okay.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. My best friend lives in the DFW area.
Yeah.
So been all around. I was just up at DFW area to see Queen, which was
Yeah.
amazing.
Nice, nice,
Yes.
nice.
So I'm very familiar with the Texas space, but we
Yeah.
really feel at home here. It's just I've just felt so supported. And I think that that's one of the biggest, like, massive mental health shifts is coming from Los Angeles and coming from a
Mhm.
background of like both entrepreneurship and a career like years ago, like a lifetime ago. It feels like in screenwriting, which is how I started really diving deep into people's stories.
Mhm.
Um, those worlds are very lone wolfish,
Yeah.
and it can lack community because there's so much competition.
Right.
And in that space, like being able to be in a space where suddenly within a month of moving here, I went to this, just a connect group to just connect. And they were talking about personal development. And all these women were opening up about their stories about postpartum or depression or alcoholic husbands. And I was like, oh, like transparent, open women's circles of just sharing stories. Like, this is my jam, where we just get to open up and be able to be real fucking human beings with each
Yeah.
other. Because I think it's so dangerous to put any person on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Because pedestals are really unshaky surfaces that get knocked down. And I
Mhm.
mean, I've had some pretty astounding accomplishments in my life so far, and I feel like I'm just getting started. But when I do see people put me up on a pedestal for what I've achieved thus far, I'm like, please take me off of that because I promise, like at some point, I'm gonna fail, and I'm okay with that. But I don't know if you will be.
Yeah.
So the pedestal is a very shaky surface. So I always like to take the role of the pioneer. Like I'm happy to pave a way and light the way with some tools and some strategies that have served
Mhm.
me and that have been of service to my clients who have gone on to achieve massive success, some far more than I have. And that ability to just light the way and pioneer, that's what we all need. Like, because where you are now, right now, is a perfect place to serve.
Mhm.
You don't have to be perfect to serve, you just have to be where you are right now. That's the perfect place.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. So we have a question from the chat, and Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Ooh. I just watched the movie with Christian Bale about Edgar Allan Poe, and it was like a murder mystery movie. I enjoyed it. I would probably say I love The Raven. I, lo- I love
Yeah.
I love Poe.
Yeah.
It's that, but I also love, what is it? Sonnet 135. Let me not to the marriage of true minds commit impediments. Love is not love that which bends in an alteration or which alters which in alteration finds or bends with the remover to remove. That's
Oh.
Shakespeare. Yeah.
Let's see. think it must be a different one because 135 is whoever hath her wish, thou hast thy will.
Okay, no, that's not it.
Oh,
Maybe it's
I'll
116.
find the other one though.
I think it's 116.
Let's see. 116.
If you
Yeah.
just say "Let me not to the
Let me
marriage
not
of
to the marriage of
true
true
minds."
minds. Yep, that's
Mhm.
it. That's
Okay.
it. Yep, absolutely. Those are good. Two very classic ones. Now, what's the movie? Something with Christian Bale and Edgar Allan Poe? Because I
It
don't know
was
that.
Christian. It was a murder mystery. It was really good.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was Christian Bale, and he is brought in to solve a murder mystery of uh these kids in ar in an army base in like Civil
Mhm.
War era, and one of the army regiment battalions gentlemen is Edgar Allan Poe when he was younger, before he became a poet. But he was a poet, and
Oh,
he's putting together all the poetic, like what how it's basically the ethos of it is poetic justice. And what does that
nice.
mean?
Okay, well, it's called The Pale Blue Eye. It's a 2022
That's it.
movie. So that's, I don't watch very many movies, so that's probably why I haven't seen it because it's fairly new. But there's a link to it in the chat if anyone on Real Good. You buy it wherever you want to buy it, you watch it wherever you want to watch it. But there's a link
On
for
Netflix.
it. Yeah, good, good.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, two classic poems and a good movie recommendation also.
Yeah.
So, what makes you happy and what do you enjoy doing when you're not busy working with different clients?
Oh, I enjoy my kids. Like they're a lot, and they're also so fun. Like I love the joy. Like it was great. My kids have always kind of worked alongside me, so they've always been my little apprentices. I mean, my 6-year-old just started his first sandwich business and made $167 at a children's
Wow.
business fair. Yeah. And there was another girl selling glitter water, and I was like, I did that.
Amazing.
So it was amazing because like they've always kind of been alongside me, but when we have just playtime, like we baked cookies this weekend and we decorated the tree. Like Christmas is my favorite time of year. So it comes with a lot of mixed emotions this year because
Hmm.
Christmas is also the time that we've literally lost a family member every
Yeah.
single year. So it's coming up with a lot of emotions. So it's honoring those feelings and having reverence for the people who have passed. And also just really, I have such a deep celebration and gratitude for being in my home, for being with my sons, for being able to like give them this gift of like a beautiful, safe Christmas in like one location that's gonna be their home, that's gonna be our legacy home. Like my son's moved every year for the 6 years of his life. Um, so it's like it's really nice to give him that certainty because we were
Yeah.
digital nomads for a little while and we wanted that and we had that and I'm blessed. I'm so glad that we had that and he got to experience that because he's really good on a plane. Um, and now he also has the certainty of like this is home base and this
Hmm.
is where we all can branch out from.
Yeah. Look, kids are a blessing and also a handful at the same time. So I get what you're saying.
Yep.
And also, what a cool beginning of life experience for at least your oldest one, right? Because he'll
Yeah.
potentially will remember some of that. So,
Yeah, I mean, he keeps on wanting to go back to Australia and he's got these weird, like amazing sort of like sparks of inspiration where he's like, Mama, New York is my favorite city. And when I'm 20 years old, I'm going to move there. I'm going to leave this house and I'm going to live there. Would you like to come with me? And I
oh,
was
at least
like,
you're
and
invited.
I'm like, thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
I hope you know how to pay your way in New York. So ideally, I'll have equipped you with a skill set that you could, afford an apartment in New York. And just, I mean, it's so fun to see. He has this desire to travel, and he wants to travel to the moon. He wants to be a rocket scientist and an astronaut. So
Aw,
I have
cute.
no doubt that he will.
That's cute. Has he seen Despicable Me? The first one?
Yes. Yes, seen Despicable Me. Yep, big fan. He's a big fan of all like the Disney movies that have like strong male
Yeah.
smart kids like Big Hero 6
Oh,
and
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And The Incredibles, and what was it? It's not Disney, but it's Spies in Disguise, 20th
Oh,
Century Fox. Yeah, where it's
cool.
like the kid is he builds things and then he accidentally turns Will Smith into a bird.
Oh, that's pretty cool. My video I think has frozen, so
My video froze. Yeah, your video
yeah.
definitely
Hold
froze.
on. I'm gonna turn off my video and I'll turn it right back on. Give me just a second. Let me see. My whole computer blinked and I don't know what it did or what happened. I mean, we're still connected, I'm pretty sure. Someone in
Yeah,
chat
I
can
still hear
confirm.
you.
But
You're good to
let's see if I
go.
can. Okay, there we go.
There you are. Yeah,
Oh,
back.
it's not a mama stream if I don't have something go wrong. It's fine. This is fine. We're right back. We're right back on track. Uh, you can. Okay, they said they could hear me the whole time. So I don't
Yep,
know what it was,
you
but
were
like
good to go.
everything flashed white and then all my screens went black and then they came back up and my camera was frozen. I, what?
Okay. What?
Who knows? That's
It's just
fine.
we're just so powerful together. Like,
We
look at the
are. It's
magic
true.
that's being
Yep.
created.
Absolutely. That is.
Watch out, world.
Yep. Yep. Well, what I mean, like my kids are just the lights of my life. We watched a movie earlier today together and it's just so nice to be able to kind of recharge with them. Of course, they're also a source of a lot of my stress. So, there's that too. But you were talking about like going for walks with them and everything and that's such a blessing.
Yeah.
That's such a fun thing to be able to do.
Yeah, they have allowed for me to reconnect with a level of imagination that I'd forgotten. And I think that we're blessed with the kids that are put into our life to remind us of who we were before the world told us who we should be.
Mm.
And like I see that in both my kids. They both have their gifts, and there's like some gifts of mine in one and some gifts of mine in the other, and I see how they also have these individual qualities of their own. Like, I've never been interested in space until my son was. Now I'm like, I will go to the
Mm-hmm.
moon. You
Yep.
go to the moon, I will
Yep.
be there.
Let's go.
Like, I will take that trip. I will I will deal with the nausea from the zero force gravity experience. I will suck that up. The that level of imaginative play, and I think a lot of times when I work with a lot of parents, we project adultisms on kids rather than allowing the kids to allow us to remember our own childlike
Mm-hmm.
innocence and humanity. And when we can see the joy, like, oh my gosh, there's such unadulterated joy. And isn't that a funny word? Unadulterated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not tainted by adultisms. And yes, sometimes it gets them into trouble because they're just not conscious and aware. But imagine if we were able to combine consciousness and awareness with and those beautiful things that do come with maturation
Mm-hmm.
and being an adult, and the level of joy and excitement and curiosity of what's this going to do? Like, how would we deal with failure if we took those two sets of skills and merge them? I think we would deal with failure a lot better
Yeah.
and have a lot more grace and have a lot more ease and have a lot more fun in our world.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's got to be something to this because now you've talked about, kind of going back to what you enjoyed in childhood and being inspired by your kids to be a little less adult. Like a couple weeks ago, we were talking to Derek Newborn. He talked about going back to what you like to do as a kid, and kind of evaluating and how you can incorporate that into
Mhm.
some of your life. And then I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter. I do a Wednesday mental health check in on Twitter, and it spawned this conversation about, well, I'm trying to figure out what makes me happy, and we talked about things that they enjoyed in their childhood and how they could do some of that. And they were like, actually, I just started trying to figure out what made me happy when I was younger and trying to incorporate some of those. So this is a sign, because if you've been here for at least two of those conversations, this is your sign too. Figure out something that you used to do as a kid and give it another go, because that's clearly
Yep.
three signs right there.
Right there. It's those little universal winks. And I mean, when I wanted to be a kid, I wanted to be a princess. I now have a company called Crown Yourself. Our
I
agency
love
is
it.
Communication Queens. I have 2 podcasts that are all about reigning in your sovereignty and owning the power of your voice, which, every queen speaks on platforms. Every queen y- is able to go forth and speak in public and gets put on shows, and it talks about the things that m- mean something to her,
Mhm.
and her mission of how she's navigating a nation. I mean, imagine, and the thing that I tell my clients in my coaching business is like, imagine if we were, because so often for kids, we're raised to, as we go for those dreams, when we're like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, when you grow up, yeah, you'll see. And oh, you'll change your mind. And I was like, I was dead serious. I was like, I'm going to be a queen when I grow up. Like, that's non negotiable. Now, I did go to school with Meghan Markle. Like, we went to the same high school, not at the same time. So it kind of missed that dream kind of missed me a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think I would be such a fit for the royal family.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I'm,
clearly not very many are.
but I do think that when we can approach the life with the principles of what would it look like if we were raised from the moment that we were born with a level of expectation that we were going to be leaders,
Hmm.
with a level of expectation that we actually had to rise into our role, that we
Yeah.
had to lead a country. I mean, how differently would we look at every encounter with every human being if we saw ourselves as a leader?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that there's a lot that isn't taught, in school, and it's not picked up by most parenting styles either. I mean, you got to pick it up where you can
Hmm.
to kind of instill that in your own
Yeah,
kids.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to lead when 86% of the workforce feels disengaged from their work.
Yeah.
Like, that's not leading. That's disengagement from feeling a lack of purpose.
Hmm.
But a queen, a king, royalty is literally comes with a built-in purpose of like you're going to lead a nation.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. Now, some have abdicated the throne in the past, but at least they were raised with the opportunity, skill sets, tools,
Hmm.
um, and support network around them that had the expectation. I think expectation is a word in society that we can take for a recovering perfectionist like myself, who we can take pretty hard and high, because for recovering perfectionists, we hold really damn high expectations for ourselves, sometimes completely unreasonable expectations.
Hmm.
The problem is our environment does not support us to the level of the expectation that we have for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, thus, there's this you will only rise to the level of your environment.
Hmm.
You have to, in order to make any massive change in your life, you have to change your environment, which is why I'm not surprised that over the past 6 years, with becoming a mother, with growing my business, with then adding in another business, that like our environment has changed and we've moved
Yeah.
6 times. And I'm very glad that where we are, we will be a space that we can evolve and grow and branch from.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
And I used to want to be a criminologist when I was younger. Like, that was another one of my things that I loved, because I've always loved the inner workings of the mind.
Hmm.
And so I've always been fascinated with princess stories and crime stories,
Hey.
which seems paradoxical, but I think that we as humans, every single one of us has the capacity for really, really, really good and
Hmm.
really, really horrible evil. It just depends on the scope. So one of the true crime, I mean, when I lived in Hollywood, I definitely was very, very aware and into the Manson murders, and like looking at that
Mm-hmm.
level of cult phenomenon to commit atrocities because some madman said to do it. I even went when I was 19 years old. I went with my then boyfriend to the house, and my friend at the time, who I was in acting class with, when I think I was I was younger. I was 17 or 18. My acting class friend was actually dating the guy who bought that house.
Oh, wow.
And she was blonde and looked a lot like Sharon Tate. And she was like, I can't stay there, Kim. Like, I cannot stay there. There's just like, and I was like, well, what? And I remember I was driving around with my boyfriend and I was like, what if we just went? Like, we're in the neighborhood. Like, what if we just went? And so we went, and I have always had a little bit of extra sensitivity and awareness of energetics and things. It's what's made me a very good coach. And as soon as we got to that driveway, my body went, and I was like, oh, I was horrified.
Oh, man.
So yeah, we backed up out of that driveway real fast. Like
Yeah.
that was a no-go because I knew someone was murdered right there. I also like it's not a true crime necessarily, but I've been fascinated with the Titanic since I was 10.
Yeah.
Just absolutely riveted by it. Yeah,
I mean,
just and all the conspiracy theories
I
around
was
it
just
too. I'm
gonna
so
say there's
interested in that.
so many conspiracy theories. There may have been some crimes, so
Yeah, yeah, you never know. Yeah,
it is
very a
entirely possible.
very interesting take on just the whole concept, the whole
Hmm.
mythology of it is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and when you think about going back to Manson, you think about like cult leaders versus kings and queens, like there's a fine line between leader and cult leader. It's just like four
Yes.
letters at the beginning of it.
Yep. Yep. And I think the fine line is really rests in sovereignty,
Hmm.
in how much freedom do people actually have and actually feel that they have within that space?
Yeah.
How much personal power, how much personal responsibility and agency are people actually claiming? And how much are they allowing themselves to be directed at by the whims of
Right.
the leader?
Yeah. Cults are always fascinating to me. It's just incredible. And there's so many different documentaries and stuff that you can go watch. It's if you're not familiar with the Manson cult, I definitely recommend looking up a couple different ones. There's one on Netflix. I think there's one on Hulu also. But they're really incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and just that time in history and kind of his way that he was able to manipulate people was
Yeah.
just horrifying.
Yeah, and just bend them to his viewpoint. And there are some parallels that I really
Mhm.
don't want to think about right now with this election cycle coming up. So we'll just leave it at that.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So, overcoming adversity is a central theme in your life. And I know you talked about bulimia earlier, but how did you navigate challenges like bulimia and growing up with an addict for a father and abusive relationships to emerge more resilient and stronger?
The biggest thing was I had to take personal responsibility and
Mm,
agency for my life. Like, there is a big difference between being a victim of an experience and having a victim mindset. And yes, there were several experiences where I was a victim of that experience. 6 years old, when you can't defend yourself and you're sexually molested, yeah, that's a victim being a victim of an
mhm,
experience. And holding on to that, blaming that experience and carrying that experience with so much blame, shame, and guilt, where every choice for my future is based on that experience, continues to feed the experience power. And that contributes to what I had was a victim mindset where I believed that I was broken, damaged, and a victim
mm,
for years. And it wasn't until I took personal responsibility for my actions because my bulimia stemmed from my lack of control, which stemmed from control issues of not being able to control an addict in a household. If you've ever lived with an addict, it's challenging. And my dad was a high functioning addict. He was a very, very good man when he was sober. When
mhm,
he was drunk, all of his own demons and all of his own generational trauma and all of the things he experienced growing up, which were far worse than what I experienced, that was brought forth because of the demon that alcohol kind of the spirit that alcohol brought forth. There's a reason why it's called spirits. And that that experience of learning how to navigate that primes me for choosing scenarios that I was very familiar with and comfortable in chaos, where I was able to thrive in a way. I prided myself for a long time.
Mm.
I can thrive in chaos. I thrive under pressure because I knew how to. That was my survival instinct. That was what I was familiar with. So when I had to take responsibility at the things that I was doing in my life, like shoving my finger down my throat, um, and purging and binging, that was actually a slow form of suicide and was killing me.
Mm.
Like, I had to take responsibility that it was never my father doing that. That was my choice. And it may have been the beliefs that I had seen, adopted, what I call plagiarized programming that I'd accepted of these beliefs of being broken, damaged, and a victim, but I had to accept that I had chosen to plagiarize them. I had chosen for them to be mine. And when we take that personal responsibility, that's how we start to see how life is happening for you instead of happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you take personal responsibility for where you are now, that's when you actually can create change.
Yeah. And I just want to be clear, like, you're not saying that if you're in a situation that is beyond your control that you have to take responsibility for that situation, but
No,
you
no, you are
always
not
have
responsible.
control over your actions. And like, there's a difference between like, this is your
Yes.
fault, your responsibility, versus I'm going to take out of this what I can. I just want to make that very crystal
Yes.
clear up front.
Yeah. Crystal, I love, thank you so much. There is a concept called the drama triangle. And it was created in the 60s. And when you're stuck in this triangle, at one corner you have the victim, at the other corner you have the villain, and at the other corner you have the hero. And it's not that you are in control of the whole circumstances, but you are in control of how you respond.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. That's why I love studying Viktor Frankl's work, who's a Holocaust survivor. If you've never heard of him, he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, or my greater favorite, which is Yes to Life, which was actually what Viktor Frankl wrote 9 months after uh, being set free from Auschwitz and after his entire family was murdered. And
Hmm.
the ability to, one of the greatest things is he said between stimulus and response, he saw that even in the worst, most horrific scenarios, between stimulus and response, there's always a choice. There's always a gap. And it's in that gap that lies our freedom. That is our freedom to choose. Do we respond or react with brutality, with blame? Or do we, brutality, the villain side, blame, the victim side, or trying to save the day, the hero side? Or do we step into a new choice?
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing is when you can flip the drama triangle on its head, the victim becomes a creator because the victim now has the ability to create and alchemize their pain and their problems into something that can be trans transpire it can be alchemized to serve other people. The villain becomes the challenger. That's the person who challenges the systems and is like, this is a systemic problem. We need to disrupt this. They become the disruptor. The hero, instead of being the enabler in the drama triangle, becomes the coach. They become the guide. They become the one with the strong boundaries of saying, we're no longer going to do the codependent jam here. We're going to own our boundaries. And as I told one of my clients, I said, you are 100% responsible for you. You are
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to take 10%, 20% of anybody else's responsibility for their choices and their actions and their responses. Those responses, those actions are on them. You cannot take their responsibility.
Yeah.
That's on them.
Yeah, I love that concept. I haven't heard it put that way before with the triangle. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really great framework for being able to
Hmm.
see how you can literally flip it on its head with the power of choice.
Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit and kind of do a back to basics, because you're a trauma informed coach and you help
Yes.
others overcome and transform self limiting stories. So, what is trauma informed coaching and what are self limiting stories?
So, trauma-informed coaching spans a range from everything from psychotherapists who are trained as coaches, that is not me. From my range is where I work with trauma somatically, because our body is run by our subconscious mind. And sometimes our body knows more than our brain does. And how you will I'm sure there are some people who have experience where if someone just touches you in a way, you're like, nope, 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 nope. And it could be a traumatic memory. It could be an experience from the past. It could be a whole bunch of different subconscious processes, but the body will know before the brain does. Because the brain
Mhm.
has a way is built to, and we've been conditioned to trust our logic, where our brain will say, no, 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 he's a really nice guy. No, 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 go to his camp. No, it's fine. It's just a few other friends who he has over playing guitar, Charles Manson. So so our brain will logic us into, oh, well, it should make sense. I should like this person, but my body's saying no. And so what I do as trauma informed is I help my clients learn how to trust and understand the signals that their body is giving them.
Mm.
Learn how to basically understand their own body language through the power of somatics and through the power of breath work, because breath it has been translated in many different languages of the ancient world as meaning spirit.
Mhm.
So when we can just allow ourselves to breathe and feel our body, suddenly A, it can provide healing for past trauma, and B, it can provide a navigation tool to process and understand and learn how to trust ourselves when everything logically is saying this should make sense. Everything logically, the pieces align, but my gut says no. And
Mhm.
how do we trust our no that our body's telling us instead of going with our conditioning of logic?
Yeah. That's something that I have had to not convince myself, but remind myself that my gut instinct is there for a reason because I ignored it and got into a very awful relationship for a very awful amount of time. And I just ignored.
Mm-hmm.
I can point to a dozen more, probably 2 dozen, 3 dozen different instances where I ignored my gut instinct because on
Mm-hmm.
paper, logically, all of the rational, everything, but I should have listened and I didn't. So that's something that I have worked on in the past with my therapist is like, no, actually
Mm-hmm.
that gut feeling, that instinct is there for a reason. It's not to be ignored.
It is not, and actually there was new research that came out that I heard on, I think it was Impact Theory, that Mel Robbins said on one of her podcast episodes on there, that actually they've discovered that when our cells actually divide into like the brain, it's literally brain and gut. Like that's what
Yeah.
is the initial. So it's two brains divided. We've just learned to be from the top up, like that everything happens from the top up. But when we can learn how things feel in our body, how to
Mhm.
trust our intuition, how to understand, like, where does fear live? Where does
Yeah.
fear live in our body? When we feel something, if you think back to a choice that you made, we're like, oh, my gut was saying, oh no. And I still went. And I believe me, I have a few. And those experiences were like, oh man, dang it. My gut was telling me the whole time that this is
Yep.
not the situation for me.
Yeah.
And but if you think back to what that feeling was, like where did you feel that in your body?
Mhm.
Like, how did it feel? Did it feel like it was spinning or prickling or just like a little whisper? Like, there are all different ways of the clairs in like clairsentient, clairvoyant. There's all those different clairs of how we can feel something. Sometimes people hear sounds. Sometimes people feel words. Sometimes people feel a sensation or a prickling, and it's that's why you need to navigate it for what is for you
Mhm.
and not as for like what it is for me or what it is for somebody else,
Yeah.
because it's unique and designed for you and you alone to learn how to navigate this communicatory. It's like a Wi-Fi signal. Like we have to learn how to understand where's the router and how to successfully tap into that Wi-Fi and what's the passcode, because when we do, we learn to like trust those intuitions. We're like, I don't think this is right,
Mhm.
even when logically all the steps make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what are self-limiting stories? So that's kind of the trauma-informed piece. So what are
Yeah,
self-limiting
so
stories?
trauma-informed piece, so self-limiting stories, they're any story, and it can be even positive stories that hold you back for reasons of safety or familiarity, for reasons of control, or for reasons of social acceptance.
Mm.
So, for example, if you just tell yourself a story like, I don't look that great today, and somebody comes up to you and gives you a compliment, it's like, oh my gosh, you look amazing. You say, no, I don't. Like, I feel kind of bloated. And then they give you more reinforcement of, oh my gosh, you look, no, you don't look bloated at all. Like, look at your waist. So they're reinforcing positivity because of your negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So that creates a framework of like, oh, here's how I get the positive reinforcement is I be negative to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates every belief system, everything, everything is a belief system. Absolutely everything. And we can question the problem is when some belief systems are so deeply held within us that we identify with them as being us.
Mm.
So it's like I'm a bad person because I want this, that, I'm a bad person because I want more money. Then suddenly that's a belief of identification. And so thus you'll start to see in your circumstances money that just will it may come in, but then it may leave. And everything is responding to this Wi-Fi signal that we're putting out
Mm-hmm.
from our electromagnetic bodies of saying what we are available to receive. And so what I do as a coach is I look and examine, I listen to the context of people's language and how they speak, not necessarily what they're speaking, but I'm listening for the common patterns in their story. And then through listening through the common patterns, that's how I can identify what the specific limiting stories are and what could be. And then I work with my clients to see what could be a more powerful, empowering story that they would that might create better results. And we can do that through either talking through them and coaching to a more empowering story, or we can do that through timeline therapy, which does it like that.
Timeline. Pardon me. Timeline therapy.
Yeah, so timeline therapy is a blend of neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis. So
Okay.
basically, it's really great for people who've had any form of shock trauma, which is like, divorce, bankruptcy, um, suddenly car accidents, things like that, or from childhood trauma because you don't actually associate into trauma, which is why it's
Mm.
different than traditional talk therapy. So you're experiencing the you're seeing it through not through your own eyes. You don't
Mm.
have to because once if you've been through drama, you don't wanna relive that shit.
Right.
Like, you really
Right.
don't. You don't wanna go back and relive it and repurpose it and, like, talk it over. Why did it happen? Because if you go down the why spiral, it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
your brain will always give you a reason why. It'll say, "Oh, that bully over there," or "You were mean when you were 5 years old," or "You accidentally hit your brother when you were 2," and, like, it's gonna give you all the reasons. So, why is a great question if you wanna direct it toward purpose. It's a great question if you wanna direct it toward, like, why am I creating this company? If you wanna direct it toward your business or your podcast or a creation or a purpose or vision, like, what's my why? Like, I love Simon Sinek's start with why. Just don't start with why if you're looking at your
Yeah.
limitations.
Yeah, or past trauma. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, because it's your brain will your subconscious mind, one of the prime directives is that it loves to please. And so it will give you exactly what you're looking for. It has no right or wrong, good or bad. It's like, "Oh, you want more of this? Okay, that's what I will give you."
Yeah.
And it doesn't know that you really may not actually want that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't give you that discernment. It's like a toddler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you help someone identify their self-limiting stories, even if they're like a toddler's not aware of
Yeah.
what is going on around them most of the time? I mean, they're only aware of what's right in front of them. But even adults, sometimes we're not aware of the
Yeah.
things, our thought patterns. So how do you help someone identify what their own self-limiting stories might be?
So I look at what is manifesting negatively in their life. Maybe
Mm.
it's a conflict with their child. Like, let's just take that for an example. And they're struggling with their child. Um, think of a specific example that I can share. Okay, so one of my clients was struggling with his child was struggling with depression. And his problem was he was stuck in the hero role and he was wanting to
Mm.
save his child. I mean, because that's
It's what we do
that's
as
parent
parents.
that's
Yes.
that's mama bear, daddy bear, that's what
Yep.
we do. Like we're like, who's messing with my kid? Like
What can I do?
even
Let me
if
fix
it's some,
it.
what can I do? Let me fix it? Let me strap on my tool belt. We will go to town.
Yep.
What needs to be done? Um, but the problem, like, because when we look through the lens of how, and this is gonna, I am warning you, this may be triggering for some, of how am I creating this problem?
Mm.
It's a question that when we can look through that lens, it removes us from being the victim and being at effect, and it actually allow us to look and be the creator to find a solution.
Mm.
And so what can I do within myself? Because we don't have control over other people
Yeah.
as much as we would like to. Like, as much as we would like
So
to,
many
especially
times.
kids. So many
Yes.
times. But when we can look at how am I creating this? Like, what is it in me that I am? So when we looked at it through that lens, he was able to see his own childhood wounding that was unhealed, that he was projecting his fear onto his son. His son didn't need his fear. His son just needed his love and support.
Yeah.
But because it was backed with his childhood wounding and fear, that was creating a more intense fear-based response rather than the ability to handle the situation with just love and compassion and support.
Hmm.
And so once we shifted that perspective, his son started to feel better. His son started to feel seen and heard and validated. And suddenly he went to work for his dad.
Oh, that's cool.
And they were able to heal their relationship because no longer was my client looking at it through the lens of fear, because that was
Yeah.
his perception for what he was creating in his reality. We only have control and agency over our own reality and how
Hmm.
we perceive what is happening in our world. And so when we can look at what is happening negatively, how we can look at and assess, how are we responding, how is this, and sometimes it's not a one-to-one. So for example, we can take the concept of avoidance, which is a huge common one, and it's also a huge trauma response. So we were I was coaching one guy and he was really deeply struggling with avoidance. And he was also struggling in his business. He was struggling with avoidance, but he didn't know that he was struggling with avoidance. But it was manifesting in his business as suddenly prospects were just ghosting him, like just
Mm.
ghosting him. Like said, they would be really interested and then they would just avoid making the decision. And I said, okay, well, where is it? How is this a problem? And he was like, well, they, if they don't, come on board, then no, I'm not getting paid, then we're not making businesses make money, yada, yada. But as we started to look deeper into the problem, we really started to reflect on the problem really was his problem with avoidance.
Mm.
And so when he shifted how he was dealing with avoidance, suddenly his energy shifted. He started approaching problems, and suddenly his energy became more decisive, which then he started to attract more decisive people into his world because like attracts like. That's the law of vibration. Is and it's also no, there's a law of vibration and there's the law of attraction. The
Hmm.
law of attraction is based on law of vibration. The law of vibration is that everything has frequency and vibration, and you have to be and in the coaching world you'll probably hear it say that you have to be a vibrational match for what it is you want. Well, if you're vibrating at a level of fear, and these can actually, like, emotions have been measured if you look into the work of Dr. David Hawkins with the power versus force or letting go, and the map of consciousness. Those are two great books. Um, he has measured emotional frequency, and emotional frequencies of shame, guilt, fear, anger, pride, those all vibrate low and slow. But the tipping point, and this is where the greatest shift can happen for people is when you have the courage, because it takes a lot of guts to take personal responsibility. It takes a lot of guts and courage to approach your problems head on instead of avoiding them. Avoiding them, you're stuck in a fear-based vibration. Approaching, you're actually being that courageous, man or woman entering the arena, as the Teddy Roosevelt quote goes. You're stepping into the arena, you're facing your problem. You're facing the thing head on. And it's just like when you're in a dream or in a nightmare and suddenly, you've been chased by the monster and you turn and look at it. And then suddenly the monster goes and shrinks. And it's not as big of a problem anymore because you suddenly raised your vibration to be one of courage. And that's what it takes to actually shift, is looking at, it takes a lot of courage to take personal responsibility. It takes a ton because it's not a sexy conversation to have. Like,
Yeah.
no one likes to look at their gaping wounds and they're like, I don't want to look at that. I just kind of wanted to pretend it wasn't there. But when we're able to have an honest, like, come to Jesus moment with ourselves, in essence of saying like, okay, how am I contributing to this problem?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because of shaky boundaries. Maybe you're projecting your own fear onto somebody else and they don't really need that. Like in the scenario with my clients, maybe you are avoiding something and you need to approach it. Maybe you're beating yourself down when you really need to be building yourself up. So looking into being able to say, okay, how am I manifesting this? Because then when you look at it through that lens, it actually gives you the agency and the power to change it. And that's when you become a magical creator of your circumstances.
Yeah. What are some common obstacles that people face when they're trying to overcome self-limiting beliefs, and how do you guide them through those challenges?
When they get too smart. Seriously, seriously, because we can be, especially if they know what the problem is, because they're really familiar and comfortable with the problem, and they know that that's the problem, and they're like, oh yeah, I can cite the things, I know exactly what it is, my therapist says it's this. And that's when we can that's when the challenge is like, okay, I have my sit down talk with them where I'm like, look, you are really smart, you're a smart cookie, and you have mastered being able to dance around fixing the problem because you can look at it straight in the eye. You're like, that's my problem. I know what that is. You have the courage to look at it, but you don't have the courage to take it down and make it your bitch. Like, you need to be able to take it down. And so I say, like, we can, make friends with the problem.
Yeah.
We can absolutely do that. And you can walk alongside with that one problem for the rest of your life, like a really shitty boyfriend. Or we can break up with the problem.
Yeah.
And we can look at how can we find a maybe new, more interesting, more sexy problem to have than the same one, the same pattern that's been repeating, that you've gotten so smart, that you've gotten so aware of, that you just haven't embodied it. You just haven't taken it down.
Mm-hmm. That's funny because that sounds just like something my therapist would say to me. like I know what it is. I know what I should do. I know the next step. And because of that, I can avoid the shit out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because we get so competent, like we're so good with our conscious mind because we know.
Yeah.
We just know. We know how to deal with it.
Yep.
We know how to deal around it, but we're not actually dealing with it.
Right.
And that it's the moment when we decide, which is what my TED Talk was really about, the power of making a fully embodied decision
Mm-hmm.
and saying, this is it. This is my decision. And to decide, the actual word means to kill or cut down, like side, like homicide. So interesting that you asked about siding. But to decide, like, so a really fully embodied decision is to say, like, I am no longer available to deal with this. Let's say, for example, it's a money manifestation problem and just constantly money comes in, but then suddenly all these bills come in too. And when you set the decision of I am no longer available for X, Y, and Z, and then hold that boundary, and even hold the boundary of like, even if money issues come into your sphere, it's like, okay, well, what do I do to deal with it? Do I get a job? Do I get a side hustle? Do I sell some stuff on Etsy? Do I like, how do I say, if I'm no longer available for this, I will do everything that it takes to remove myself to get this problem out of my life. And actually, like, here is my boundary. I'm no longer available for you. Do not call, do not text.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I feel like it's one thing to say, like, all right, I'm going to draw this line. I'm no longer available for it. But can you share some practical strategies that folks can use to start challenging and overcoming those self-limiting stories?
Yes. Look at your language. So start thinking from like an omniscient perspective. Not that you're God, but just like start thinking, like, imagine like you're watching the movie of your life. And if you've ever watched like a really good thriller movie, I don't watch horror movies, but I love a good thriller where you're like, don't go in that door. And you just know, and you see the character and you're like, don't go in the door. That's how, when you look at how you're speaking your life into existence, look at the words that you're saying on a regular basis. So for example, I was working on this actually with my 6-year-old son. Because I don't know where he got it, because I don't use this language, but for some reason he's gotten to a lot of I can'ts. And I'm like, says who? Says who? And he's like, I can't. And I'm like, okay, sure, you're right. Like, what? And I was like, you're right. And then he was like, oh, what do you mean? And it threw him off balance, because he was expecting me to oppose him. And I said, you keep telling yourself you can't, you will be absolutely right. Would you like to be right, or would you like to get the result that you want? And he was like, I really want the thing that I want. And I was like, well, then you're going to have to be wrong about about saying you can't, and maybe shift your language into saying you can. And so I'll give you a tactile example as well from a client of mine. I was working with a client who was a real estate investor, and she kept on saying, I don't have a client. She's like, she had a property. She had to get another investor to buy in and buy it within 2 weeks. And she came to me like all afraid and was like, Kim, like, I don't know how you're going to help me, but she came via referral, but she goes, I've been told that you can help me. And I said, yes. And she said, I don't have a client for this property. And I just listened to her for about 10 minutes, and consistently it circled back to, I don't have an investor for this property. And I said, do you know everyone in the world? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, I mean, there's 8 billion, I think 9 billion now people in the world. You know everyone? And she's like, no. And I said, is this a good deal? Is this kind of a no-brainer for investors? She's like, absolutely. This is like an absolute shoo-in. And I said, okay, so let's just imagine, because your unconscious mind is tied to collective consciousness. And if we just take off the limits of what you're telling your unconscious mind, you say, I don't have an investor, your unconscious mind is like, yep, you're right. Toddler brain, here we go. Yeah. Focus on that. I don't have. Let me prove to you how much you don't have, exactly what you don't have. Great. And instead I said, let's live in a little bit of the land of Delulu and the delusion, and just say, I have an investor and I'm so excited to become consciously aware of who they are. And she was like, okay. And she said, that doesn't feel like, that kind of feels a little like a lie. And I said, okay, then let's back it up. So I'm willing to meet the perfect investor for this property. I am willing to meet the investor for this property. So we started backing up her language to where she could actually believe it. And we got to the point where she was in a state of gratitude. And so it changed her vibration from one of being fear and scarcity to being in a state of gratitude, which is a much heightened vibration. Because when you're in gratitude, you already have what you want. So we shifted her language around that. And then we also shifted how she was speaking to herself on a regular basis. And when she would go to networking meetings with other real estate investors, she would say things. She would say, I am so excited. She's like, yes, we absolutely have an investor. By the time after the 2 weeks, she's like, absolutely. She goes, I haven't met them yet. I'm so excited to meet them. Do you know anyone who could be a fit for this property? And suddenly people are like, oh, I like her. And she actually ended up getting her investor within 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
And it's the power of our language, because when we put these blinders on of our language sets limits.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets these guidelines as far as where our unconscious mind will go. And it's like, when you're sitting at your computer and you're supposed to write like marketing copy or a book or create something, and it's like nothing's coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we can be very familiar with that moment. And so that moment gets programmed that, oh, if I sit at my computer, then nothing comes through. And suddenly I'm staring at this cursor that's just mocking me until I chat GPT it. And then, so, but this ability, so your environment, your location has power, but then you go into your shower and you take a shower and suddenly you're like, oh, this brilliant idea just hit me, because you're not putting the blinders on in that
Mm-hmm.
location.
Yeah.
So it's looking at a location, like I said earlier, like you have to change you only change the level that your environment will allow you to. That's why if you change your environment, you can change your thinking. So changing the environment is one. So this doesn't necessarily mean get up and move. This means maybe you go work in a coffee shop. Change your environment of the location where you're working. Change the environment. Like maybe if you're used to journaling in your bed and it turns out to be this whole shit scribble of pure just like self-limiting beliefs and stories, and I suck and I'm so upset with all this and all that. Maybe instead try journaling in the morning, or journaling at a coffee shop, or journaling on your couch instead of in your bed, and change the location, because location has energy.
Mm-hmm.
And changing the location, changing the environment. Yes, sometimes this can mean changing the environment of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. It can be, if you're surrounding yourself with a lot of toxic negativity online, change that environment. It can be the podcast that you listen to. If you listen to a lot of the news, that can be an incredibly depressing thing to listen to. Changing that environment. Being able to uh, look at who are you consuming in your environment, because that's what's feeding into your subconscious mind. And then look at how is your language dictating your reality.
Mm.
So what are you saying to yourself? And just start noticing those thoughts. I have a little journal that's next to me. And every time I hear something, like just yesterday, I had this, like, there was a problem with my team, and I had this little silly negative thought come up, and I was like, whoa, okay. It's like, oh, you're bad at business. And I was like, I have been an entrepreneur since I was 19, but I was just like, that is absolute bullshit. But still, that little negative voice popped up. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wrote it down and I was like, okay, I'll deal with you later. Like, just like a petulant child where you're like, you know what, I'm going to deal with you later. So I write it down, notate it. It's notated. It's out of my mind. And then I'm like, okay, we'll process that one later. But noticing those things of how you're speaking to yourself, and also how are you speaking out loud? Are you deflecting compliments? Like when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, you look really amazing today," do you say thank you, or do you say, "Oh no, not or you say, or do you make excuses of like, "Oh, I just got this dress," and like you blame you let the dress take credit instead of your own
Mm-hmm.
energy and essence. Um, so little things like that, just being aware and watching the movie of your life play out, allow yourself to have a moment of reflection at the end of the day and literally go back and rewind the day. Look at, oh, how did I deal with that? Oh, I think I was talking to myself pretty negatively there. How could I think about it differently? I literally just walk these steps through words. It's late.
Yeah.
I walked my son through these steps earlier, like this tonight, as I was putting him down, because he just was not listening.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a big head, and we call it his bowling ball, and it's like filled with super good brains, and it's large, and he kind of leads with it. And we said, watch it, buddy, you do that on the couch, you're going to hit your brother. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he did it on the couch. After we told him that, he hit his brother. And look at how our words manifested. And then he got really down on himself. And so I went up and followed him and I said, hey, bud, like, look, how do you think you could have handled that differently? And he's like, maybe I wouldn't have done this. Maybe I would have done this, like flip instead. And I said, that could be feet instead of head, but your feet are
Yeah.
not as big as your head. So that I allowed it to be playful and not have shame or guilt attached to it, but being able to question and ask the questions of how or what.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, why is a really, really shitty question to ask when you're looking at your limiting beliefs, when you're
Yeah.
looking at like, why did I do this? Especially if it produced a negative result. So basically anything that produced a negative result, anything in your life that's currently negative, do not ask why it's happening. Just shift the question and start asking the question, what or how?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how could I change my reaction next time? How could I what do I need to work on to make this situation better? How could I approach this situation? How could I have communicated better? What boundaries do I need to set with my family members? What do I need to say next time? How could I have prevented the situation from happening in the first place? So being able, what and how questions will always give you strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And your life is directed by the quality of the questions that you ask. So many people are programmed to ask why because we haven't really been allowed to ask that question. Um, and yet we're taught in school, all the what is like, here's what you need to know. And meanwhile, we're like, why? Why do we need to know this? It's why we get bored. That's in my opinion. That's we're like, why do I need to know geometry?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Calculus. Why? But the ability to ask why is great, purpose and
Mm-hmm.
vision, but when looking at anything negative, anything, any circumstance, any person, any issue that you're dealing with, any problem, ask yourself what or how questions.
Yeah.
What specifically was wrong about this? Was it the whole, like, and especially look for in your language any sort of grandiose statements of like, they always do this
Yeah.
every time. Really? Every time? So those sort of massive grandiose statements, they can contribute to us tainting the picture
Mm.
of the person, the situation, the experience, rather than looking at what specifically was it about this moment that I had a problem with? What specifically triggered my reaction to respond in that way? What specifically caused me to feel this way by looking at this post from someone on social media?
Yeah. I think that that's a great thing. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of asking myself why I did something or why something happened to me or something like that, and asking what I could have done differently or how that could have gone differently. Those are questions. Now, I will say those are the kinds of questions that I ask my kids whenever they have a problem. I ask them the whats and the hows. I don't necessarily ask them the
Mhm.
why, but when it comes to myself, I ask the why. So that's something that I can work on for sure. I'm gonna sidetrack just a little bit because can I see your nails? I keep catching glimpses of them. Oh my gosh, that is a beautiful color.
Thank you.
I
I just
love
got
that.
them done yesterday. My son and I go as our mommy son bonding time, and
I love
he always
that.
has to approve.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, of course. Well, so
He's
my 10-year-old,
hysterical
my
going.
10-year-old always picks my eyeshadow colors. So he always picks
Oh,
the eyeshadow. He doesn't always pick all of the eyeshadow colors, but he at least picks two of them. So tonight there's like this yellow color, and then there's this, you probably can't, a little bit you can.
nice.
There's like a gold
It's like
shimmer up
yeah,
there.
it's like a
He
pretty
picked,
gold shimmer,
yeah,
and I
he
see
picked
like a little
those.
red or a
Yeah,
pinkish.
yeah. So
So
he always
pretty.
picks those. Those little bonding moments are super cute. Anyway, I kept getting
They're amazing.
distracted by your nails, and I was like, I just need to ask to see them so that I can focus again. But they're beautiful, and
Much respect.
Chad
Thank
says
you.
that they love them as well.
Yay! Yes, Frenchies, they do an amazing job and they are all like non-toxic. So they're
Oh,
the
nice.
gel
Yeah.
extensions.
Ooh, perfect.
Yeah, so they're not acrylic with all the nasty chemicals in them.
Yeah. I have to do just regular polish, which I do. I've got like a big thing of
Mm-hmm.
polish up here. I have to do regular polish. Gel, my nails are so thin. Gel just tears them up. Dip nails tear them up. Acrylic tears them up. I have to just do polish, but I always love seeing people with gel nails. They look so nice.
Love them. It's my guilty pleasure, and because I've also have like tiny little boy hands. There was a friend of mine in high school. She was like, "Kim, your hands look like little boy hands," and I was like, "They actually do if I don't have nails on."
Oh, that's funny. Now, you shared a lot about overcoming personal challenges, but I know that struggles don't always translate to professional success. So, how do you respond to someone who might question the connection between personal adversity and your coaching advice to overcome and transform those struggles?
Can you frame the question again?
Yeah,
That's
so
so personal adversity versus
mhm.
professional?
Yeah, so if you've got something that you've struggled with or something that's happened in your life, there are plenty of people out there who are like, well, I had a lot of shitty things happen to me and it's never translated
Mhm,
into professional success. So how do you handle that
mhm.
kind of skepticism around it?
Of how personal adversities can transfer into
Yeah.
becoming professional
Hmm.
success? Okay. Hold on, my timer keeps oh, yeah, it says get ready for bed.
Well, we can wrap up if you need to.
No, I am totally fine. It's just my
Okay.
I have an alarm because I've been staying up a little late being a
Yeah.
Christmas elf recently. So so how personal well, the thing that I say is that for personal so I just want to be sure I'm clear on the question. So personal adversity is transferring into professional
Yeah.
success or how people who are professionals who are dealing with a personal issue, like how they're making sure it doesn't affect their professional life.
Honestly, I think that could go either way because if you've got
Okay.
someone, so I'm thinking if you've got someone who's looking at your success stories, right, which there are lots
Mhm.
of and really
Yes.
wonderful ones, and they're going, okay, well that's not going to apply to me because I've been through a lot of shit in my life and it's never translated to professional success. Or if they're already in a position where they're like, well, I don't want to screw this up, but I'm going through a hell of a lot of stuff right now. Yeah, I think that could
Mhm.
go either way. So I guess whichever one you want to address.
I love it. Okay. I think some of my favorite client wins are when not only do they manifest like their dream job or get, their first 10K month or something like that, but they one of my clients, she reconnected with her estranged daughter, went through a divorce, really big divorce, and the problems that were she came to me initially for business performance coaching. And I looked at her business and I said, the common denominator with your business and your personal life is you. You're the common denominator. Like, so let's look at how each part of you is translating. What's translating well? What's mapping across well? What's working in your personal life that maybe could be applied to your business life? What's working in your business life that maybe we could apply to your personal life? Like maybe sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's looking at like numbers, like how I'm just curious, like how many times a week are you having sex with your partner? Like if it's 0 for multiple weeks, that could be something that we might wanna work on.
Hmm.
I cannot tell you how many times I've actually referred for homework that my clients go out and make some loving with their partner, like,
It helps with a
many,
lot of
many
different
times.
things.
It helps with a lot of things.
Yeah.
It really does. And the ability to just recognize that you are the common denominator in every area of your life.
Hmm.
And so often we are very used to, or at least especially pre-COVID, we're very used to like, this is my professional career box. This is my personal box. This is my, family box. This is my friend box. And some get little pieces of you, but no one gets everyone
Yeah.
until COVID happens. And then suddenly there's kids walking back and forth on your Zooms. And then your business life, you're half in pajamas from the waist down, but you're, professional from the top up, like go rocking the full mullet style. So that experience, I think, created a lot of holistic integration that I do think was needed, but also opened up a lot of gaping wounds for like
Mm.
where people had unhealed trauma, where they weren't doing the work, in or using work as an escape mechanism from their family life and family
Mm.
struggles, or vice versa, using their family as an escape mechanism for their work struggles. So being able to look at, how are you the main character in every single one of these areas of your life?
Mm-hmm.
Does that help
Yeah.
the question?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
So you're also you've got a lot of advocacy work that you do as well, and you've been
Yes.
nominated for awards and everything, which is really cool. So how has your journey influenced that work, and what message do you hope to convey to others through the activism work that you do?
I mean, I have advocated for people with healing for eating disorders, and for just being able to use their voice, and having a family member, since I had a family member die of cancer, and I've had family members get cancer and experience that. Like, the biggest thing is finding the power within yourself to see, how are things happening for you. And I am what I call an unsinkable optimist. I I can find a silver lining in everything,
Mm-hmm.
in literally everything. And it's part of my gift. It's also part of what makes me so hopeful for humanity, or our possibility to expand and grow. And if more people can see the little glimpses of silver linings, of possibilities of how life can be happening for them instead of just to them,
Mm-hmm.
then we can create a much more conscious world where we have reverence for the moment. And I think that the biggest thing is having reverence for the gift that we have, that we've got to wake up today and are still breathing.
Yeah. I have a good friend who used to repeat the mantra. Oh no, now my brain just went to the one that I use with my own kids, which is alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic, which is not what I was trying to say. Oh, shit. Hold on. It'll come to me. Oh, she used to say it all the time at work, and it was just there in my brain. I can walk, I can talk,
It'll come to you.
I can walk, I can talk, I can use my mind. And she's like,
Hmm.
those are blessings that I can just lean on and say, these are the things right now. And if ever I lose one of those things, then I can adjust what I say to myself. But she was just
Hmm.
like, I can walk, I can talk, I can use my mind, so it's a good day. I I mean, that's something to be in the present moment and find little things to be thankful for, because even if everything else is going to shit, if you can
Hmm.
say at least one of those three things, you're
Hmm.
on the right side of stuff. And
And
I'm
I
right
mean,
there.
go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm right there with you. Like I do my best to find the silver linings and everything. I used to be a very unshakable optimist. Less so. I went through some shit. Less so. Now probably more
Hmm.
on the realist side, but not to pessimist. So I can still find like the smallest things to be going, this is something to be thankful for, even though it's a completely shitty situation. Look at what
Hmm.
can come out of even a shitty situation. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, one of my mantras is, I am choosing to be in this space. Because so often we live by these have tos. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I should do this. And we live by the have tos and the shoulds.
Mm,
And that's all external. That's never actually us taking ownership. And my biggest thing that I advocate for is people's personal sovereignty, is their own, claiming their own personal power. You being able to make your own choices, and to know that that is a choice that you are making
yeah.
consciously. Like, for example, I used to get anxiety with my son when I was putting him down, because sometimes I was just like, it's been an hour and a half, dude. Like, go to bed. Like, it's like that book. Who was it? Samuel L. Jackson? You read it? Go the fuck to sleep.
Go the fuck to sleep, yes.
Or
And
just
then
says,
so
yeah,
many different people read it. It was amazing.
brilliant, brilliant. And it's like that. But it's because I would get anxiety, because I would notice my mind would start to disassociate and go at the 45 million per miles per hour it would, going toward like all the other things that are on my plate, or on my to-do list, or on our project management
Yeah.
software, that I was like, oh, I need to be taking care of this. And I'm like, no, in this moment. And how I squashed my anxiety was, I said, in this moment, I am choosing to be a good mom. In this moment, I am choosing to be present with my child who needs me, because this moment will not be a moment in 5 years from now. This
Yeah.
moment may not even be a moment a year from now. So in this moment, I am choosing to be a good mom and honor this moment. And I'm okay if I need to work a little extra longer tonight to get a couple things done to make sure that I have this moment, because this moment I'm going to look back and be so proud of myself that I held the space for this moment
Yeah.
instead of trying to rush through it to get to that next thing that I probably won't remember that I even finished 10 years from now. But I'm going to remember this moment.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, a lot of the time I just remind myself not to strangle my children, but I love them so much. But yeah, I mean, it can be hard whenever you got 1,000 things in your brain. And like you were saying earlier, pre-COVID, it was very, you go to work, you come home. And now post-COVID, it's like, I work full time from home right here
Mm-hmm.
in this very chair, where I go out there and I cook dinner and then I usually come right back here and work some more. And so it's real easy, I feel like now more than it used to be, to just not be super present in either work or home
Mm-hmm.
life or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also really looking at your screen time. Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to, I am all for, like, one of the big things that I advocate for with every single one of my clients, whether coaching them in personal and in life or in business, is always look at your data.
Yeah.
Like the best of the best track their data. And I'm like, if you look at what's your sleep data? Like I was, where was I? It was earlier this year when I was going through just like my taco falling apart moment. And the simplest thing, I looked at my sleep data and I was like, oh, I'm only sleeping 4.5 hours a night. That's
Yeah.
why. It's not some mindset shift or magic that I need to make happen. My biology needs to take its meds. It needs to
Mm-hmm.
meditate, exercise, monitor my diet, and sleep. Those are my meds.
Yeah.
So that's my little acronym. But those four things: meditation. I do a daily transcendental meditation. Eat, exercise, like movement, mindful movement, whether it's actually going, like I need to exercise by myself. Like I love going out and playing with my kids and chasing them around, but I like exercise for me is like this moment where I get to honor my
Mm-hmm.
temple and just have reverence for this body that is it's temporary. But I want to honor the rental unit that I have for now. And like I would like to have it for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and then diet, like I don't believe in diet. I think dieting is a 4-letter word, but dieting is honor, like a diet, I believe it I take it in the original Greek word, which means lifestyle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are the foods that are contributing to the lifestyle that I want to have, to the level of energy that I want to sustain? And when I look at food through that lens, it's game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just like, oh, let me just put something in my mouth and just have something. It's like, what is it? What is contributing to what I want to create? And then sleep. And that's honestly been my hardest one because I have a 2-year-old
Yeah.
and we sleep. So he's great and I love it. And I've loved it since being able to do that and have that closeness and have that bond with him. And there are the moments of waking up in the middle of the night, asking for the baba and like
Yeah.
the things. And that's okay because I know it's a season and I know, and every time that happens, I'm like, in this moment, I am choosing to be a really good mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's my conscious choice. Just like when I sit down at my desk and say, in this moment, I am choosing to be a really good business owner. In this moment, I am choosing to be a really good writer. Even if what I write right after that is complete dribble. Like, just, I make sure that every single moment, if ever I'm feeling out of my body, that mantra brings me back to the present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the meds, the meditate, exercise, diet, and sleep. I'm I first of all, I have insomnia, so it's really hard for me to sleep sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
My sleep data will tell you how my mental health is doing without fail. If
Mm-hmm.
you look at it, You can see, am I having a good day? No. How much did I sleep last night? There you go. that's
Mm-hmm.
that's it. The connection is real and it's right there. But also, like, I'll just say, as far as your, like, monitor your data and everything, give yourself a week. Use your phone as normal. Your phone is tracking what you do. There are ways to look at how much time you spend in each app. And then there are also ways to
Mm-hmm.
set timers on those apps so that they will literally close and you can't open them again until midnight or whatever you set it to.
Mm-hmm.
And give yourself a week. Use it as normal, review all your data, and then do what you need to do as far as giving yourself limits. We give our kids limits. We as adults can also give ourselves limits. I had to limit TikTok.
Yep.
I had to say, you may not be on TikTok for more than an hour a day. It's honestly probably too much, but I got to give myself something sometime. So,
Yeah. And it's all about just knowing and making the conscious choice instead of being
yeah.
guided by the habit, or quite frankly, the addiction,
Yeah.
especially for social media. Like, these are trillion-dollar companies that have poured a lot of money into
Yes.
making their apps very, very user-friendly so that you stay on the app.
Yeah.
And that has never been before seen in the history of our humankind, so far as we know, the level of connection that we have today and what it is doing for our mental health.
Yeah.
And looking at the state of mental health in the world, I would say that it's not doing too many great things,
I agree.
because I think we're losing our presence and our intentionality with it.
Yeah.
And I think I completely love setting a time limit, and having that time limit, and also knowing your data and seeing how much you're actually consuming it. Like, especially if you use it for business, which a lot of us do, pretty much all of us, I would assume, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Like, there can be the excuses of looking at and like, oh, I'm on it, I'm using it for business. No, are you creating or are you consuming?
Yeah.
And if you struggle with the creation on it, then maybe look at how can you create outside of it and then delegate to those who
Yeah.
can support in the consumption of it. So, like, in the uploading, putting it onto the apps. Like, I deleted Facebook off of my phone. I've put it back on. I've deleted it. We've had a very off-on relationship with it being on my phone. But when I notice that I'm on it for too much, that's when I delete it from my phone, and I'm like, I feel a sense of peace
Yeah.
and allow for that. Like, okay, this is what I want more of. I don't want more of the falsified urgency that's not really producing anything anyway. Like, when really, I just read a beautiful book, that I love Stephen Pressfield. His book, The War of Art, is one of the greatest books ever, I think, in terms of looking at the artist's journey and what an artist face in terms of resistance, which I think is more resistance now than ever, because we can use so many good excuses. Like, we're really smart, like, with using excuses now, where we can see the problem of, like, oh, I'm creating on this app, or I'm my favorite one, I'm researching. That's a good one. I'm researching. No, you're not. You are consuming. And the ability to, and his second book was Turning Pro. I don't know if it was his second book, but he wrote The War of Art. He's a huge fiction writer. And then he wrote this book called Turning Pro. And one of the biggest things, he said, the professional is, and this is the way you overcome resistance, you overcome the doubt, you overcome the fears, is you turn pro and you become a professional. And the professional is committed to the art of the craft. The professional sees the labor. And the difference between, like, sending a Facebook post and, instead of really composing your symphony or really composing your novel that you really want to write, like, oh, I'm just going to write a Facebook post. It's, it's inspirational. It's needed for my marketing. Yeah. But is that something you really have to do every single day in the way that you're doing it? Or could you be more discerning with structure and creating a structure and boundaries around it so that you could actually produce in the way that you want to produce?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Links to both of those books are in the chat for those who want them. And Bite Mark put a comment in the chat that I really love. She said, "Life is giving me opportunities to overcome adversity." That's that silver lining.
There's the silver lining if ever I've heard one. Yep.
Yep.
And it's I like to think of it like a game.
Hmm.
Like, when you gamify it and you say, "Okay, life's giving me opportunities to overcome adversities. Amazing." And what's the game? Like, the game of life was always one of my favorites as a kid, and it's like, oh, same with Monopoly, like, "Oh, I just went for bankruptcy filed for bankruptcy. Okay, so what? Take another roll of the dice. Next." And I think when we can allow ourselves to have that grace of gamification, it takes away the pressure of
Mm.
all the self-imposed pressure that we can put on ourselves, especially high achievers. We're very, very
Yeah.
skilled at putting a lot of pressure on ourselves,
I
especially
love
me.
that, the
I
grace of
speak from experience.
gamification. That's wonderful. As a gamer, I especially love it.
Yes.
Your work has been featured on major platforms like we talked about before, Netflix and ESPN
Mhm.
and NPR and everything. What advice do you have for someone who's looking to share their stories and expertise on a broader scale like that? How do you get started?
Start going on podcasts.
Mm.
Like, start getting in the practice and the reps of putting yourself out there, sharing your story, sharing your message, serving with your tips and tricks, and honing and practicing that message. I never would have had a TEDx talk had I not done 150 podcast interviews, because I knew what was going to land for a TED talk. I knew what parts of
Mm.
my message were really the ones that hit home, because I could see it in real time from the podcaster's face and notate it and then maybe do a post around it. And my TED talk, literally, I had was a few Facebook posts compiled around the time that my dad was in hospital.
Mm.
And that experience was was simultaneous with me going on a lot of podcast interviews, and so I was expressing and feeling into what needed to be expressed, but it only came with practice.
Mm.
I have been public speaking since I was 15 years old, probably even younger. Actually, probably 10 years old, because my first speech was the DARE speech for the
Oh,
drug and alcohol rehabilitation one. I won
taking
that
it
speech. My
back.
dad didn't come. So I remember that. That was yeah, I recently found that speech and I was like, oh, what a I remember I so wanted him to hear it because it was like this passive aggressive dig
Oh, yeah.
of like the dangers of drugs and alcohol.
Yep.
But I got into pageants when I was
Mm.
15 years old, and the speaking part was the part that terrified me the most. And you would have thought, like, I was bulimic back then, so that the bathing suit would have terrified me. No, it was public speaking,
Mm.
because I was so scared of my own voice. But I've had 20 years now of practice, of getting to share my message, of putting myself out there, of testing, trying, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and playing with it and honing it. So going on podcasts is the easiest one, because it's there's a lower bar for entry. Like, there's
Yeah.
literally 15 Facebook groups that you can join to get booked on a podcast.
Mhm.
We have one called the Profit from Guest Podcasting Facebook group that you can join, and hashtag be a guest and see who will take you, and just share your story. Say, this is me looking to do some more guest spots, sharing my story. And then Harrow is another great one if you want to get your work featured on a grander scale.
You take a drink of water.
I don't have
And
it. Wait, no, I have
go
a little bit of tea left.
Oh, there you go. So Haro is help a reporter out, and you can get on there. They have an email that goes out every day, and I
Hmm.
think you can pay for for a specific subset of emails
I've never
and
paid.
stuff. But yeah, the free one is super comprehensive, and you can get
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff on there, and it's like broad. So many
it's
stories, so
broad.
many. They're always
Yep.
People are always looking for someone, an expert in something. So yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great one.
Yeah, Harrow is great. That's how I got CNBC and Thrive
Mhm.
Global. It's I got Forbes through a women's in business network that I was a part of. Um, but yeah, Harrow was huge.
Yeah. For someone who's looking for long-term transformation, how does that process, how long, what kind of time requirement is there for that? If they're looking to work
Depends on
with
what it is
you
that you
to
want.
overcome like a self-limiting story, what's the time commitment there?
To work with me, so I work in terms of 3 months or 12 months.
Mhm.
Um, and with 3 months, we get down and dirty with your subconscious mind, like looking at every limiting belief, everything that's um, holding you back. And really, that's where we do a lot of NLP work, timeline therapy, hypnosis. With my 12-month program, we dive into all aspects of business, career, life. I really deeply get to know my clients very well in that program, and such long lasting transformation comes out of it. Like one of my clients went on to achieve her 1 year goals of $4 million in 3 months. Um,
Wow.
yes. Another one of my clients ended up fulfilling his childhood dream and buying himself a plane. Another one hit 500, hit
Whoa.
half a million in sales and got engaged. I just have a heaps. You can go to on the praise site page of my website and see all my
Yeah.
clients and what they've said. But the transformation, it can happen as fast as you want to choose
Mm.
for it to happen.
Yeah.
Frame it like that.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, you get in what you put in, right? You get out what you put in.
You get in what you put in, and also like looking at transformation as someone who's had a rockin' upheaval of like transformation after transformation after transformation over the past 3 years. Um, Sometimes we may think that we want certain goals within the certain time frame. I mean, I can't tell you how many times since 2016, I bounced up and down saying, I'm having my $1 million year. I am so grateful I didn't achieve it back then,
Mm.
because though that version of me would not have been able to sustain it
Mm.
and to manage it and to handle it, and the responsibilities that come with that influx.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that manifesting.
Yeah.
And that comes though with the choice to become the person who has it,
Mm.
because that means that you're literally stripping your identity of who you have been, and that can be it's a very courageous process to
Mm.
go through, because you look at everything that's holding you back and you stare at it with a microscope, and then you strip it clean
Yeah.
and you crisper it.
Yeah. Well, it is time for the magic moment of the stream, and I happen to have this little. Oh no, it won't turn on. Okay, well, I have a magic wand, but it.
Ooh,
Oh
I
no.
love this.
Oh man. Oh, there it goes. Yes. Okay, I got it. Yes. All right, good. I don't know why I wouldn't turn on, but if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
That a diagnosis is a death sentence.
Hmm.
And I say the word death sentence very specifically, um, with the belief that that diagnosis is going to be with you for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
Like when I look back on the decade that I was bulimic, um, I don't identify with that person anymore. Like I look back and I want to give her a hug. The thought of like throwing up my food, I'm like, I honestly, whenever I get sick, I'm like, how did I do this for 10 years? Like, how?
Yeah.
It boggles my mind, because the butterfly can never go back to being the caterpillar. And with true transformation, not recovery, but true transformation, you're never going back to that version of you who was that. There may be shades, there may be variances, there may be colors, but just like the butterfly has certain colors, like the caterpillar had certain colors, like there are certain colors that you carry with you, but you're never going back to that same identity. And that's a stigma, especially since when we just redid our life insurance, like that diagnosis that I had still haunts me 20 years later after being completely recovered. And I'm like, that I don't believe in the fixed mindset. I think it's a fixed mindset. And I think it is a fixed identity that we strike somebody with a label and say, this is you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I think that maybe it's you for a while. Maybe it is you for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
But what if it's not? What if it could be more than something that haunts you for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And I mean, so I sucked it up and just paid the extra for the bit because I mean, I needed my life insurance.
Yeah.
I was
Well, I
like,
mean,
I'd rather provide my children with life insurance, but seeing that
yeah.
and seeing that as the stigma that, oh, that's going to be carried with me when I'm 40, 50, have not had a relapse or an issue
Hmm.
for decades upon decades, and yet still, that's that's where I would wave that magic wand.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like a broken arm doesn't stay with you, even though you could easily break your arm.
Yeah,
Again, yeah, I agree. That I
yeah,
would eliminate that one as well, for sure. Well, I'm gonna
yeah. That
post
you can
your
heal.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to post your socials one more time. So if anybody's looking to connect with you, you're welcome to click through to any of these. And I will just open it up to you. We're coming kind of to the end. So, folks who are here in the chat, if you have any questions for Kimberly or anything you want to say, feel free to pop it in there. And Kimberly, I'll just open it up to you and say whatever you would like to throw out there as far as resources or things we didn't talk about or cover. Feel free.
Oh my goodness. 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, one of the best books on the planet. That one is a big one. Uh, it really highlights in beautiful simplicity, which is the art of its genius. If you're looking for a book to kind of guide you with leadership and understanding, and then or if you're a parent, I'll just drop all the books. Um, No Drama Discipline is a huge one for understanding how the child's brain works and development and what it truly means to disciple um, and discipline your child, which is where the root word comes from disciple. It means guide. Uh, it means being that embodiment of that person that they want to follow. And how do you guide that instead of project unhealed trauma? Um, and then The Drama of the Gifted Child, another great one. Waking the Tiger by Dr. Peter Levine is a great one about trauma and understanding how trauma impacts. And then Grief by I think it's Dr. John Connolly, who's the founder of Rapid Resolution Technique, on how to process and understand grief. Because as you go through identity shifts throughout your life, there will be periods where you will grieve who you have been, just like the stripping of, just like you grieve a person who's passed. Like I look back on something on my little 5-year-old, 6-year-old self, and I have moments of grief for her, and I see, and I also have so many moments of fond memories of just excitement for what she's going to create and how proud she would be of what she's done so far. That understanding grief and being able to process, because that is a process of transformation that comes with
Mhm.
with the transformation itself.
All right, I think I got
And then if anybody has any questions, totally open.
yes. Okay, so I got The Drama of the Gifted Child. I'm just making sure I grabbed all those 15 commitments
Hmm.
of conscious leadership. No drama. Oh, wait. No drama
No
discipline.
Drama Discipline.
The Drama of the Gifted Child. Here's the link to that one. I was just looking it up to pop it in there.
Hmm.
Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma, which I think has been suggested before. I
Hmm.
want to say it was Jessica that suggested it, but I'm not positive. And then Grief is Not Sacred.
Grief, yes, grief is not sacred. And then the last one would be The Mountain Is You if you
Ah,
struggle with self-sabotage.
okay.
Have you read that one? Oh, it's
No, I
so
have
good.
not. I have not.
It is so good.
Okay, I think I've got links to all of those. If I missed any, I apologize, but I promise you they'll be on the resources page afterwards. So you can go to the Tacos Fall Apart website and it'll be on there, I promise.
This way you can put your taco back together. These
Yes,
books will
yes.
help put your taco. And also crownyourself.com. We have tons of resources, tons of blogs. I have been writing for years on there about understanding ownership and navigating perfectionism and tapping into your higher consciousness and understanding your subconscious mind and how to navigate between the dialogue between conscious reasoning and logic and subconscious emotions and processing and the body's intuition. So there's heaps of resources there. And always you can check out the Crown Yourself podcast and now our newest podcast, which just made it to number 55 in marketing on Chartable, which is our
Nice.
Communication Queen podcast.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
cool.
super exciting. So those
Well,
two podcasts are also great if you like podcasts.
yeah. Bite Mark says, thank you so much for being here. I have lots of new resources to look into and apparently a TED Talk to watch. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
And I'll echo that. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a truly lovely conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor to chat with you, and nice. It's so great to meet a fellow Texan, fellow
Yeah.
Texas podcaster. Yeah.
I know. I mean, listen, as soon as I can get out of Texas, I will. But for now, I'm here. I mean, I was born here and raised here and everything. So, yeah, I just
Yeah. So
would
moving
rather be
on
somewhere
now.
else.
I get it.
Eventually. Look, it's hard to move out of Texas. Once you're in Texas, because it's such a low cost of living, everywhere else is a higher
Hmm.
cost of living. It's hard to get out.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But
Second
yes,
best options are like Tennessee and Florida.
yeah, which are not better. Not better for what I'm looking for. So, but yeah, very lovely to meet you and just a really good conversation. I appreciate it immensely.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And it's been such an honor. So
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing all the links and being able to share it with all of my
Yes.
community as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right, chat, give me just a minute to disconnect with Kimberly offline and I will be right back. Stick around. Okay, I had to watch an epic Fortnite battle happen because my oldest... Oh, why did this stop? When did that stop? Oh no, how long was that not on? Uh-oh. Wah wah. Anyway, hopefully it turned itself off fairly recently. I thought my oldest was in bed. He was not. He was in a Fortnite battle. And so I watched for a little while. We are going to say goodbye to YouTube. Say bye, YouTube. Thanks for being here for Mental Health Monday. I appreciate it. And I'll be back Wednesday on YouTube, but I'm going to keep going here on Twitch. So stick around for some Civilization achievement hunting shenanigans. So let me stop on YouTube just to keep everything separate because it's easy on Twitch to like separate it into chapters. It's not so easy on YouTube.